Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Today is day 213 of our readings and Varta 211, the story of Gulab Das, a Kshatriya from the east. Sab Vaishnav ko Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Radhe. Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Tamasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Sri Devi, who manifests from Sugandhara and is thus a personification of her divine loving sentiment. He has previously been mentioned in Varta number 41, the story of a poor Brahmin. He was born to a wealthy Kshatriya family in the east. His parents both died when he was 20. He was alone and free. One day in his village, 3 or 4 Vaishnavas were discussing divine matters together. They were on the subject of Sri Gosaji's divine powers. One said, "O brothers, Sri Gosaji is most merciful. He never abandons any soul that has surrendered to him, even if they behave most unrighteously, and he uplifts them all. Through his divine power, he accepts them into his shelter. He is thus most compassionate." Gulab Das heard their conversation. He addressed them, "O Vaishnavas, is Sri Gosaji truly so compassionate?" The Vaishnavas realized that he was a divine soul and said, "Oh yes, he is really like that." Gulab Das asked them where Sri Gosaji was residing, and they told him that he was presently living in Adel. Gulab Das left his village and went to Adel. He supplicated Sri Gosaji, "O Maharaj, please accept me into your shelter." Sri Gosaji is the knower of everyone's inner heart, and he felt Gulab Das's mood, so he replied, "O Gulab Das, I will indeed uplift you." He then granted Gulab Das initiation with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandh. Gulab Das returned to his own village. Part 1. Gulab Das thought to himself, "Let me see if Sri Gosaji can really uplift me." He went to live in a village where all the inhabitants were of barbaric and uncouth character. He began to smoke hashish and eat meat. He spent every night in the arms of prostitutes. He spent many days in this way and even changed his name from Gulab Das to Gulab Khan. After some more time, Sri Gosaji sent one Vaishnava to visit him there. The Vaishnava greeted him with the Lord's name. He said, "Sri Gosaji has sent me here to see you." Hearing this, Gulab Das piped up, "Oh, Sri Gosaji really remembers me to this very day." He said this 3 times and left his body there and then. He attained Sri Gosaji's lotus feet, and the Vaishnava who had been sent there felt very remorseful. He went back to Sri Gosaji, who was in Govardhan Nathji's temple at the time of the Bhog, or afternoon services, and temple curtains were open. Gulab Das in his divine form was there, having the holy sight of the Lord. The Vaishnava greeted him with the Lord's name and asked him to recount the whole story, and he told him everything. This whole episode has already been told in Varta number 41, the story of one poor Brahmin. Bhav Prakash. The moral of this story is that without a shred of doubt, Sri Gosaji unites to Sri Govardhan Nathji any and every soul whose hand he grasps. Thus concludes Varta 211, this story of Gulab Das, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. There is no end to his tale. Varta 212, going forward, the story of a sweeper from Gokul, Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Sattvic disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Manohar, who is a Sevak of Sri Nandaraji. He manifests from Sugandhara and is thus a personification of her divine loving sentiment. He appeared here on earth as a boy in the sweeper's family in Mahavan due to some offence that he had committed in the Leela. Part 1. This sweeper lived near Gokul. He had been initiated by Sri Gosaji with the Lord's name. On that very day, he very lovingly served the Lord. He never allowed any rubbish to be left lying around the area. He used to sit in front of Sri Gosaji's betak every day and would immediately pick up any and all used leaf plates and bowls that Vaishnavas might have dropped on the ground. Sri Gosaji went daily to bathe in Sri Yamunaji, and the sweeper would always clean the ground where he was to walk. He also went to sweep in Sri Thakurji's garden. He did not wait for Sri Gosaji to have to tell him to do it, but thought to himself, Sri Gosaji will be walking in this path, so there should be no rubbish lying around anywhere that might get under his feet. No rubbish should be left that might come under any Vaishnava's feet either. This was the way of his loving Seva. Then he would sit down there and have the sight of Sri Gosaji and get to accept prasadi leftovers from Vaishnavas gave to him. He knew that Sri Gosaji's prasadi leftovers were the most pure, and he kept this attitude in his heart. Through the spiritual power of those prasadi remnants, he attained wisdom. His heart was filled with such pure wisdom, and he came to know the true nature of his soul. Bhav Prakash. This story reveals the true divine form of the prasadi leftovers of Vaishnavas. By its consumption, the heart's eyes opened. When one has fed Vaishnavas with prasad and then consumes the leftovers, that is what is referred here as prasadi leftovers or jutan. They said, Part 2. Once a group of Pandits, or learned men, arrived in Gokul from Varanasi. They had come to debate with Sri Gosaiji. The Vaishnavas informed them that Sri Gosaiji was engaged in Seva, and that he would come out when the Seva was complete, and that he had partaken of prasad. They said, "He will answer all your questions then. So for now, set up camp and come back later." The Pandits went into the village, did their cooking, then they offered the preparations to their Sri Thakurji and partook of the prasad. They wanted to give some prasad to the sweeper, but he piped up, "Your cooking etiquette is very lacking, so why would I want to accept your leftovers?" The Pandits tried to give him one bread that none of them had touched, but the sweeper said, "This is not prasad. It has not been offered to the Lord, and he has not accepted that offering." The Pandits objected, "But we did offer it to Sri Thakurji." The sweeper replied, "You were blowing on the food as you cooked it. The air that came out of your mouth when you blow is very unclean and is forbidden in the Vedas and Shastras. All your foodstuffs were prepared whilst blowing on the fire, so they are not offerable to Sri Thakurji. He does not accept offerings from those who have compromised cooking rules. There is a verse in the scriptures that teaches this principle." The sweeper recited the relevant verses and explained in their meaning to the Pandits. The Pandits asked him, "How did you get to be so wise?" The sweeper replied, "I always eat the prasadi leftovers of Sri Gosaiji. From this practice, I have gained so much knowledge. Please now consider whether this is true. You have come here to debate with Sri Gosaiji, and you are most welcome. But before you talk to him, please discuss with me. Then go to discuss with him." When the Pandits had a chance to hear the sweeper, When the Pandits had had a chance to hear the sweeper speaking on scriptural principles, they became silent. They thought to themselves, "Oh, brothers, when the sweeper has this outstanding knowledge and we are not able to hold our own against him in debate, then how will we fare if we go before Sri Gosaiji? He will most certainly defeat us, and we will have nothing to say. This would be a matter of shame for us. Better if we leave from here right now." Thinking in this way, the Brahmin Pandits left. One Vaishnava came to Sri Gosaiji and told him, "Wise men came from Varanasi to debate with you, but you were in Seva." They set up camp in the village. They cooked and tried to give the sweeper their prasadi leftovers, but he would no way accept them. The sweeper himself then engaged them all in debate, and he quoted so nicely from the scriptures that they were not able to answer him. Sri Gosaiji told the Vaishnava to call the sweeper to him. He asked him about everything that had happened, and he told him. Sri Gosaiji laughed. Bhav Prakash, the purpose of this story is to teach that Vaishnavas must never blow onto the cooking, neither to boost the fire nor to cool it. When one blows, then drops come out of the mouth and everything gets polluted. Sri Thakurji never accepts such offerings. When Sri Gosaiji accepts someone into his fold, then they effortlessly gain great knowledge on all subjects. The Vedas and Shastra's main scriptures remain on the tip of their tongues. Thus concludes Varta 212, the story of the sweeper, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava, and there is no end to his tale. Waji wa, aaj ke aanand ki jai ho. Shri sabhi Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.